like to start with a question for you, Jayshree. Earlier in the conversation, you mentioned mentors and how they've shaped and impacted your career. Which mentors would you say have most impacted your career? And what advice on mentors would you give to either students or folks who may be earlier on in their career?
Thank you, Natalie. In my case, I won't say there was a magic silver bullet of one mentor. And maybe it's just the way I synthesized information. But what I got out of mentorship was, some from my parents, some from my bosses, some from my professors, and some from my peers. And it's that collection of mentorship that meant more to me than one individual per se. If I had to pick one, it'd be a tough call. But and again, it was also in different phases of my life.
Mhm.
So obviously, as a childhood and as a student, my parents had the greatest influence. As I was a newlywed and starting a family, my husband and the family had a huge influence. As I went into my professional careers, my family was still a very important pillar. But many of my bosses, I still remember when I made my shift from engineering to marketing, I was petrified because everything in engineering is, very binary. It's ones and zeros. Everything in business can be shades of gray. And I did not have the benefit of a great academic degree from Notre Dame or a proper MBA. I was taking classes while working because I couldn't afford it. And so one of my bosses just, he pulled out his map and he said, I know you're going on your first trip. This was before GPSs were formed. And he said, this is how you land in Boston, Logan. This is how you go, rent your car. And this is how you'll go on the Sumner Tunnel. And it still sticks with me. So mentorship isn't always just the career advice, but it's that first step and first break I got from engineering to business, right? And so I'd say it's been a collection of individuals and a collection of experiences, really.
Thank you. Tom, do you
Thanks,
have any comments you'd like to add?
I think the best point I just heard Jayshree make, it's going to matter where you are in your life and what you're looking for before you pick a mentor. The gentleman that she just referenced was someone who knew how to travel and things. That happened to be a key thing. The other point that Jayshree said about the difference between engineering and non-engineering is living in the world of ambiguity. And she lives in the world of ambiguity. Hasn't got a better anybody I've met. And she would say that's one of the reasons for her success. Well, if you're looking for a mentor, find someone who understands things that you really think you should want to know. If I want to go do that job, I want to get to that level, try to meet somebody who can tell you what really that's about. Because sometimes you'll have this perception that's completely off to what that really is when you get there. And if they can share with you, and then you can say, wow, that is what I want to do, and give you some advice on people you could talk to. I oftentimes have students reach out to me and they'll ask for advice. I'm not the person who has the answers, but I can direct them to somebody on that, if they have the question right, that can really help them with this is how it really works. So that's why I advise people use your Notre Dame network. I find the Notre Dame network to be pretty phenomenal in the sense of most people respond and try to help you. And
So true.
It's been true for a long time.
To answer Natalie's question one more level, one of my greatest mentors was my professor, who taught the electrical engineering and electronics class. And I was telling Tom the story. Is that a story worth repeating? The
Yes, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we took this class, and he made the tests really hard as an Italian professor because he wanted to see how we think. And we all failed. It was not graded on a curve, so we were all Fs. Right. And for somebody who's used to doing pretty well in school, this can be a very demoralizing experience, right? So he came to class and he gave us all our final exams back and said, you are all failures. You are not going to make it in the real world. This was supposed to be his way of inspiring us to do better, by the way. And then he proceeded to look at his pen and he said, this pen I can teach better than all of you. It has more brains. So the rest of my class, I'm going to teach this pen. So it was very offensive. But you can see, since I'm talking about it many decades later, it had a lasting impact. And what he was trying to do in that class was try to, help us not just become book smart, but know how to apply that in the real world. And he really gave us all a jolt on we weren't really good real world engineers. By the way, he later on came to attended my farewell party at Cisco when I was leaving, and said, you were always a quiet engineer, but I knew you had it in you to do more. I sure couldn't tell from that final exam I took and failed, but he Dr. Franco ended up being a mentor in his own subtle way. I realized it later.